Okay. Okay. Let's take the music down a little bit. Yeah. Hello, and hello, everyone. It's a great day. It's a good day. Um. So this is Adebayo here again. I'm excited to be here. I think this is the probably the fourth webinar we're having this year. Yeah. Yeah. The last one we had was about AI in education, right? Where we talked about the Curtis Moore story. And that was quite an amazing time. And again, I'm just so excited to be here again because of what we are going to be looking at today, because of the focus, and I mean because of how important it is, and because of the amazing person that will be our guest in today's edition. Um, so let me just do a bit of checking around. I know you are either watching us on LinkedIn or you're watching on YouTube. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, it will be nice to meet you. Um, I really cannot wait to get into the conversation. Sincerely, before I get into the conversation, oh yeah, Benedict, thanks for joining. Oh yeah, see, okay, so I'll be delighted. Then, yeah, of course. Why not? Why not join us right now? We're getting started. Okay, so if you can hear me, if you're on LinkedIn, please, I'd like to feel you. Just introduce yourself. Tell us your name and tell us where you're joining from. Tell us your name and just tell us where you're joining from. Um, just so I can see who our viewers are at the moment. And also, if you are connecting on LinkedIn, I mean on YouTube, yeah, feel free to also you know, um, mention your name in the chat section. Yeah, we're checking from those two places. Um, yeah, so I mean, you can see it on the screen. We're looking at Foresight in K-12 education, future thinking for education professionals. This is an aspect um, that is not really in the open, that is not, often talked about in the education sector today. And I think that is so important that this is discussed, that this is mentioned, that it is brought to the table. Um, because foresight is very powerful. I mean, we just need it. I won't say much about that because we are so honored to have a certified foresight practitioner in the house with us today. I'm going to be bringing her up shortly. Um, Amazingly, she's someone in the K to 12 and also higher head space. Um, Let me tell you a few things about Dr. Priska from. Let me check. I want to do this real quick from LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really got me, um, I mean, attracted to her was when I saw her LinkedIn, and in the cover, on the cover page, I saw research, foresight, action. I mean, those three words. I was like, wow, that's exciting. Research, foresight, action. I was like, I think I need to start following this person to see what she has to say, and so every time I'm always looking out for her post on LinkedIn, and and how she keeps, emphasizing that importance of foresight. I mean, it's so important. I mean, it's one of the things in the toolkit of anyone that wants to be successful in whatever industry right now. Foresight is one of the top tier skills. I mean, that you need to have. Um, well, this meeting today is so great and invaluable. If we ask people to pay for what is going to happen, what they're going to be learning from this, so today is going to be something that should really be so expensive because of the things that we're going to be talking about. You know, um, so like I said, she's someone that is both in the K to 12 and IIT space. I mean, she's a lecturer from the Gateway Christian Training College and in Zimbabwe. Um, and I can go on and just keep reading so many amazing experience you want to hear about Dr. Priska. Um, but most important is the fact that she's a certified foresight practitioner. Um, and like you said, she's always so excited about foresight. Uh, so this is for every educator, right? If you're a school leader, you're an educator, come on, get ready for what is about to happen, right? I'm going to bring her. I'm going to bring her into the studio shortly. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello, Adebayo.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you and thank you and thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure. I always take any opportunity to talk about foresight and futures thinking.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Okay, so yeah. I mean, I know. I have quite a number of questions that I want to ask you here. I have quite a lot of questions. I Yeah, and I know a number of educators are wondering, like, why this topic, like, why a lot of people, so when they look at that word foresight, you know they want to know what does it mean, and so starting from that place of understanding what it means, and and that would take me to my first question as we enter this conversation, right? What is foresight, or say future thinking, and and why is it important to do? Why should every educator, I mean every professional in the industry, should be interested in foresight or future thinking? What is it and why is it important?
Um, well, futures thinking is a way of helping us think about the future, and it's an area that's been around for a number of decades. I think the very first people who started writing about it were in the 60s. Um, but it's gained prominence in the last 10, 15 years because we're living in such dynamic times. And so there needs to be some sort of framework that can help us navigate uncertainty. And futures thinking provides that framework. It's different to maybe 30, 40 years ago when change was incremental. We're now at a place where change is exponential. And so futures thinking gives educators, it gives people in all industries a way of preparing for that change so that we're not blindsided by it. If I can give an example of something that I present when I'm doing workshops with educators, I bring up a picture of the streets of New York in 1914. And the picture has a lot of horse-drawn carriages. That is the mode of transport that's shown up and down the streets at the time. And then I show them a picture of the same streets in New York in 1940. And there's not a horse-drawn carriage in sight. It's all tarred roads and vehicles. And the only difference, the thing that's made the difference between those two times is the invention of the automobile. Henry Ford produced a very efficient way of getting people from A to B. And within 25 years or so, it completely took over the streets. And so if you were living in 1914 and you were not applying futures thinking, then you probably thought that the future would look very much the same as it did in 1914. And so you would be preparing to own horses and teaching your children about looking after horses and running stables and doing all of that. Whereas the person who had futures thinking would be able to pick up that what Henry Ford has done is going to fundamentally change the way people move. And so they would be now looking at opportunities around that change. So in a nutshell, futures thinking is really just a way of thinking about how the future can and will be different.
Amazing. Thinking about how the future can and will be different. I like those words, incremental and exponential. So there was a time that the pace of change was incremental,
Yeah.
just going slowly, and and now it's exponential. And then
Mm,
it just becomes so important that we are thinking ahead and we're trying to. Wow, that's lovely. And this like analysis in the New York City, and the different years, and the change in the environment and everything, and
mm,
all of that, and it's so powerful. Thank you for painting that picture. And that picture like sets the pace for so many things right now. I mean, for those that are
mm,
listening to us, this is 2024, and if I'm going to apply that analysis, and I'm thinking about 2050, I'm thinking about the next 26 years, and I'm thinking about what can Lagos look like. I'm thinking
mm.
about what can Nigeria look like, what can Africa look like, what is possible. I'm just thinking, and just thinking, and that thinking can set so many things in motion. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Priska, for that starting. Okay, so I'm going to enter into the next question. And by the way,
Mm,
our listeners, feel free to put your question, share your thoughts in the comment section. It would be nice to feel you, right? Let us know what you think about this conversation. If you're learning something, please mention it. So, why is foresight important to an educator? So, this context is about the education sector.
mm.
We are not considering every sector; we're considering education now. Um, why is foresight important to an educator? And how can it improve the quality of your delivery as an educator in the K-12 space?
Hmm. Okay, so teachers are some of my favorite people on the planet. I think they do an
Mm,
awesome job of preparing children.
mm,
But unfortunately, I think sometimes as you get stuck into the day to day of teaching, it's easy for it to become about preparing children for the next grade. So if
mm,
I'm teaching 10-year-olds, then I'm teaching them so that when they go to the next class, their teacher that side is not upset that I left gaps. And so it can
mm,
become very, very much about content and drilling and making sure that they pass exams and all of that,
mm,
which is great. Um, but I think the work of a teacher needs to broaden. And there needs to be that realization that when you're teaching, you're not just teaching for the next year, for the next grade, for the next exam. You're actually teaching these children to prepare them for life.
mm,
And so that's where futures thinking comes in. So
mm,
if when I was in primary school and my teacher asked, what would you like to be when you grew up? And I said, I want to work at the post office. That would have been a great answer. She would have
mm,
validated my desire to work at the post office and all of that. Um,
mm,
in today's classroom, if a child says, I want to work at a post office, if I'm just doing my job as a teacher, I will validate it and say, yes, you have given me a profession that is recognizable. And I will say, okay, that's fine. But a teacher who has futures thinking on their heart and in their mind, they will now enter into a futures thinking conversation with this child to actually find out what it is about the post office that they enjoy so much. Is it that you get to interact with people? Is it because you love to connect people from different parts of the world? And then from that conversation, you can segue into, so what does this look like in today's context? What are the ways that you can help people connect?
yeah.
And so that's what futures thinking does. It helps you deliver a content that's appropriate, so that we don't get 15, 16-year-olds exiting school and thinking that they can go get a job at a post office. Because
Mm,
post office, I don't know about other places in the world, but the post office in my country doesn't do much. It doesn't do as
yeah.
much as it did when I was young. And so that's happening across the board, across different careers. So if
Mm,
educators are aware of futures thinking and the trends and the potential impact of these trends, it means that they can have meaningful conversations with their students. So that's with
mm,
regards to students. But when we look at the educator themselves, it means that they have an opportunity to remain flexible and adaptable because they are engaged in watching emerging trends and discussing how these could potentially impact the different spheres. As an educator, they can identify opportunities of professional development. They can identify opportunities to enrich their career path. They can spot when things are going to die down, which things will because of technology. So certain things are inevitably going to demise. New opportunities will rise up to take their place. So if you're an educator who's engaged in Foresight, it means that you will be on top of these. You're not going to be blindsided. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people. They get blindsided by the future. And then we sit and we say, oh no, we didn't see it coming. How come they just did this to us? It happened so suddenly. But the future doesn't happen suddenly. It's gradual. But you need to be paying attention to it as it comes along. And that's what futures thinking does. It helps us pay attention to those changes as they're happening.
Powerful. Yeah. Once again, I mean, to everyone in the room, if you're listening, feel free again to tell us your name, tell us where you're joining from, and share your thoughts, and feel free to also ask any question. I mean, this conversation is really going deeper and deeper. Yeah. So again, the post office, analogy is powerful. Yeah. So even here in Lagos, we have the post office, and really, it's not really doing so much, like you said. And so the way so from what you're saying, I see something powerful. I mean, yeah, it then becomes so important because as an educator, if I do not embrace future thinking, I'm then going to be in a place where the kind of I won't be able to help my learners, right? I won't be able to help them see the right possibilities. I won't be able to. So what they are thinking, how they are thinking in their minds, as they think about what is possible, as they make moves, as they aspire, as they think about things they want to work on or things they're going to become. Because from my own side as the educator or as a learning designer in quote now, because I have not embraced future thinking, looks like I'm going to create a kind of barrier. I'm going to create a kind of blockage. And then what is going to happen is that we're going to have a bunch of young people in that classroom who are not thinking in the realm of what is possible, who their perspective about possibility is on the lower side. Because what the teacher is talking about is just maybe just what's in the textbook and what's in the syllabus, what needs to be fulfilled, and then like you said, just thinking about the next class, and not the next word. That's powerful. Thank you so much for pointing that. That's really deep. I mean, teachers are thinking about the next grade and not the next word. That's something so huge. And I like the fact that you have already started delving already into the third question, which is about how can we practically apply. And I know at this point teachers are teaching to hear practical examples and all of that. How do we begin to promote this in the school environment today? So you might want to speak about it from the teacher side, and maybe for a school leader as well, from their side. What can a school leader begin to do to promote, knowing that this is now so important? I mean, this is so serious, right? So what can we begin to do as school leaders, as educators, to promote this within the school environment today?
Okay. So let me start with an interesting fact. So there's some research that was done, and they found that 87% of people did not want to know about the future.
87.
87%. They were comfortable with thinking that the future would be the way that their present and their past have been. And so immediately that tells us that this is something that needs to be approached with great care. That if you're a school and you've got 100 teachers or 100 staff members, it means 87 of those staff members are really not interested in having a Foresight conversation with you. And so the first thing to do is really to ease people into it. I think people fear the future. They feel that it's not controllable, it's outside of their control. They feel that it's created by other people, and that they are then just victims of what the system gives them to handle. And so I think the very first step would be for whoever's bringing the conversation to actually come to an understanding themselves of what futures thinking is all about. And through that understanding, they will then be able to communicate that it's actually a tool for empowering us to understand that we have a part to play in building the future. So everyone has a part to play, whether you're actively building it or you decide to sit back and allow other people to build it. Your decision to sit back is actually a decision. And so I think that becomes the very first thing that needs to happen in the conversations, to ease people into it, to get people comfortable about the idea of talking about the future, and then to start exploring. So a very simple way of doing it is to pick up on a trend that everyone maybe is talking about, and then flesh out that trend into, so how do you think this will play out in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? Futures thinking actually starts at 10 years, because 10 years is, it's not an intimidating number. It doesn't put any expectations on you. You know, if you talk about how do you think this will play out in 6 months, it puts a lot of pressure on people to think, okay, so I need to do all of this change in 10 months. But when you say 10 years, everyone's like, oh, 10 years, I can do anything in 10 years. Everything becomes possible in 10 years. And so that's a very good way of starting the conversation. So where do you think your learners are going to be in 10 years' time? And so you describe that world, and then the next question becomes, so how do you think you can prepare them today? What can you do today to make sure that in 10 years they are living in this world that you've described, and that they're able to do these things that you've described? If it's a school leader, where do you see the school in 10 to 15 years time? And then breaking that down to what action steps can I actually take? So when you do it that way, it becomes very approachable, because it means in 10 years, I've got 120 months where I can take baby steps towards this desirable future. So that for me would be the best way to start. But you need to break through that barrier of initial resistance, with people just feeling the future happens to us, other people create the future, and we just live in it. I think I actually found that to be the most empowering aspect of futures thinking. The fact that I had a role in creating what the future looked like. And so when I think of the future, I'm looking at 2050, and I'm asking myself big questions about the population projections are set to be 1 billion under 18-year-olds on the continent of Africa. What does that look like? What do we as educators need to be thinking about? How do we need to be building our schools? How do we need to be training teachers? What do our teachers need to be doing? And because it's so far away, I'm encouraged to do the little that I can today to make that 2050 a reality in a positive way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Priska. I am thinking about so many things. Where do I start from now? This is really deep. Where do you see your students in the next 10 years? So the 10 years standard. I got that. And for a school business, where do you see your business in the next 10 years? So I want us to talk a bit about that aspect, because I've been thinking about some things, and one of them is this. One of them is the fact that because Africa is the most fertile. I mean, Africa has the highest fertility rate, compared to other continents, and sounds like the future of the world is African, because we're going to keep increasing the numbers, and we're going to keep filling everywhere. Something is going to happen there. But then when I look at the next generation of parents that will be that will be, like customers to school business, the customers that will, yeah, that will, put their kids in school and all of that. Um, and then I look at the fact that, the Gen Zs we have today, um,
Mhm.
and their approach to work and life, there's so many issues around the Gen Zs. And, looking at the fact that they are going to, so for businesses, this is 2024. For
Mhm.
businesses in 2030 and beyond, they're probably going to have, I mean, for school businesses rather, they're probably going to have most of their parents, most of people that they're patronizing them to be these Gen Zs, right? Because I think for us in Africa, we have a lot of young people who are giving birth. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
just we're just so blessed, right? So, um, and and I think for these Gen Zs, their values, they are the ones that don't want to do the kind of 9 to 5. They don't want to do that stressful work of, they just tell you my mental health, don't stress me, I don't want to. So, and I'm looking at these people and their value and the kind of education that they will want for their kids, right?
Mm.
Knowing fully well that these people that will become these parents and their values is going to affect kind of. So what can you say, just so that
Mm.
what can you say about what school leaders, what school business, how they should think, and how they should position their business, so that they can be able to accommodate these Gen Zs that will then become
Mm.
their customers, that will then become
Mm.
parents in the next decade.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting question and a big dilemma for schools,
Hmm.
a massive dilemma. Value shifts is actually one of the things that futures thinking looks at, because
Hmm.
value shifts undergird a lot of the decisions that people then make. So,
Hmm.
if I hold certain values, those values are going to inform how I live, how I eat, how I educate my children. And so, when values shift within a society, it causes so many other things to shift as well. So, you're very right in saying that the values that the Gen Zs hold as dear are very different
Hmm.
to previous generations. And we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge that they think differently and they feel differently, that different
Hmm.
things are important to them. And it's funny that you asked that question because it's something that I was thinking about a few weeks ago.
Well.
And and I was actually thinking that the college I work with is actually attached to a high school. So it's got a high school, it's got a primary school.
Hmm.
And I was just having one of my random musings, and I was thinking it would be so interesting to go into the high school and interview the kids there to find out what their ideal school will look like.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
what they think schooling is going to look like is what they're going to be asking the
Hmm.
system to provide for them. Because
Hmm.
you're very right. In another 10 years, they are the parents and they're the ones making the decisions about how they're going to be schooled. And so I think the best advice that I could give anyone who is in the education space, who has a school, is to really start having conversations, not with your current parents, but with
Hmm.
the students, to really
Hmm.
find out from them what is it about the current system that frustrates them. So these Gen Zs are being funneled through the system, not by choice, but because that's what's there.
Hmm.
But they have ideas about what the system should look like for them and to cater to their needs. And I can, yeah, I'm pretty certain that what they have as ideas right now um, are the things that they're going to be demanding from schools once they have the opportunity to. Um, and so that's where I would say if someone is wanting to do market research to design a school for the future, start
Hmm.
talking to those kids, start talking to them and finding out from them how they want learning to be delivered. And I think that will give us a good pointer in terms of how to navigate and how
Hmm.
to set up existing schools for relevance in the future.
Hmm. Hmm. This is great. This is great to start having conversations. Now, amazingly, the last webinar we had, where we were talking about, I mean, AI in education, and I was trying to like ask this headmaster of a school, boarding school in the UK, and he said the same thing. He said you
Mm,
need to start by having conversations. said you need to start by having conversations. These conversations are going to unlock a lot of intelligence. They're going to unlock a lot of insight that's going to help in navigating. And I think again, you are bringing this to the table, the importance of breaking into conversations, especially with the students in high school today, with the Gen Zs, because they are going to become the parents of the future. They'll be looking at too, and then intentionally putting this insight together, and placing your school model side by side with this conversation. This is so golden. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is powerful. This is powerful. And I think that again, the next question we're going to move into, and I think, again, we have entered the next question indirectly, but we're just talking about school leaders and about their business model, and about Dr. Priska. What do you think? What do you think about how do you think school leaders can leverage foresight, in future proving their businesses, right? So, I mean, I've been seeing different kind of things here and there. I've been reading different kind of reports. I read one report talking about a school in the United States where they had to like start begging the kids to come to school. We're saying things like what do they call that thing? The great refuser. They call it. I read that. So call it the great refuser. Kids not wanting to go to school because of whatever reason here and there and all of that, and maybe because the model is failing them and all of that. And I'm sure you are seeing most of these conversations. So how do you think school leaders today can leverage foresight in future proving their businesses? Maybe you want to also cite some reports or some things you've seen that are pointers to how school leaders should think for the posterity of their business.
I think maybe I can start with how I first came across this whole field of foresight. It was whilst I was doing my master's in educational leadership and management, and in one of the modules we were talking about organizational models for schools, and I read an article on some schools in Australia, and they had used this fancy thing called scenario planning to plan for their schools going into the future. So to build sustainable models that could adapt to the changing systems and changing times. And so I was very intrigued because it made sense to me. It made sense that when you're living in uncertain times, you need some sort of framework to guide you into creating a model that isn't rigid. And that's the thing that we've got with the current models. They're very rigid. The way that they've been since they were created 150 odd years ago is the way that they still are. And so that presents a problem because it can't remain that way, because if it does, it means that it's no longer producing learners that are relevant to the society that education serves, which is that's the whole purpose of education. The whole purpose is to ensure that learners coming out of the system are relevant to the society that they are being released into. And so I think as educational leaders need to be very aware of the trends that are taking place, the conversations around transformational education, conversations around the different instructional methodologies that are needed for this time, conversations around AI in education and the impact of AI in education, and then work together to make sense of this data. So the future is not one set thing. No one can predict with accuracy that this is what the future is going to be. But if you have a different range of scenarios, and then pull out from those scenarios of possible futures the things that are common, so that those can become part of your infrastructure. And then the things that aren't common become the ways that you adapt to the system. I don't know if that's making sense. I'm trying to think of an example of what that could
mm,
look like. Um,
mm.
I think,
It actually makes some sense.
mm,
Yeah. I mean, what the moment you eat that word scenario planning, hey, that got me excited. That kind of got me excited because, and the reason is because um, when I got baptized, permit me for using that word baptized. When I got baptized into the world of future thinking, I mean, at
yeah,
some point, I just don't know what happened, but I just became so fascinated about future thinking, and I started doing a lot of crazy research here and there, and I discovered that for COVID-19, I discovered that
mm,
it was predicted
yes,
and then
around
a lot of things
2009,
happened.
I think it was.
Hmm, hmm. So when I saw that, I was like, "What? You
Yeah,
mean this was predicted?" And more. So again, I saw for the global north. Of course, they also have their own deficiencies. I read that there were some people that did some scenario planning, and the idea of the scenario planning, trying to like bring a foreseeable future into the present and trying to prepare for
mm,
it, and trying to that they did some things, but just that their report and the whole thing wasn't like executed. There was some political downsides to it and all of that, and
mm,
so the moment you said scenario planning and you mentioned the Australian system, and that just made a whole lot of sense. And because I have a friend, Kelly, I met her on LinkedIn too, who is in Australia. She once shared with me like a particular region of Australia, their syllabus and what it looks like, and it was very heavy on project-based learning. The
yeah,
whole thing was just so beautiful. And so when you are talking about this right now, that they did a scenario planning, like it's now makes sense. I'm like, oh,
mm,
I see.
yeah,
So this is a secret behind that syllabus, that curriculum I saw.
yes. I think um, scenario planning helps. It opens up worlds. It
Hmm,
opens up possibilities, because it allows you to explore what the future could be like, and then to bring back to the present those things that you see in that future, so that you can
hmm,
start introducing them, and
yeah.
building up towards that future. And so, if you go through that process and you're holistic in terms of looking at all the different things that can affect a school, I know AI
Hmm,
is what everyone is talking about, technology and robotics, coding, all of those things, but there's so much that can have an impact on education. And so when we create scenarios that take a look at all of that, um, you can actually get very rich data, which will
hmm,
put your school years ahead of everyone else. And so
hmm,
when others start to see, when you first start to do it, people call you crazy.
hmm,
Um,
hmm,
but then as the world starts to adopt it, they will think that you have access to some hidden knowledge, some insider
hmm,
information, when it's actually
hmm,
not that. It's just having
hmm,
a system of looking at what's happening and thinking about how that affects the future, and then coming back to today and saying,
yeah.
how do I implement it as a leader, and make sure that I take everyone, my teachers, my students, my parent community, so that we arrive at this desirable future. Um,
Hmm,
and so we've talked about the positive side, but the negative side is when we don't take a proactive role as school leaders. What it ends up looking like is the shock change that happens where we wake up
hmm,
and the world has changed, and you don't have time to adapt to the change. You have to change today because everything has changed. And that's not good
hmm,
for any business, and it's not good for schools, because um, it's near impossible to try and change. If you've got a school of 300 students and 50 teachers, it's impossible to have everyone shift overnight.
hmm, hmm,
But if you've been deliberate and proactive about engaging with futures thinking and doing your scenario plans, then you transition into
hmm,
the change. It's not as
hmm,
traumatic.
hmm. This is a lot to think about. Thank you so much for bringing in scenario planning into this conversation. As something that school leaders need to do today to
Mm,
future-proof their businesses. This is a lot. And funny, amazingly, So I've been interacting with this global risks report by the World Economic Forum, and
Hmm.
like I've been following it for like the past 3 years, and then I just discovered that most of those things that are mentioned, right? Like about 70-80% of those things, like they actually happen, like they happen in real
Mm.
time. And then
Yeah.
and, that report is one of the things that got me very interested in foresight, in future thinking.
Mm.
you know in Africa, we could have a way of spiritualizing many things, when things happen that we don't know, that we don't understand. And I just started seeing that, okay, that the world we live in sort of unfolds in a way, in a manner that can be tracked, to an
Yeah.
extent, maybe not 100%, but the way things are
Mm.
evolving, and so I started seeing a lot of things right there. And um, I started seeing that, okay, uh, um, this means a lot for school business, because for this year I saw that a number of things were mentioned, like the extreme weather condition,
Yeah.
misinformation and disinformation, and all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if these are the challenges that we're dealing with as a race, as humans, then why is our education not speaking to these things? Why
Mm.
are these issues not a part of what we are empowering the coming generation to overcome? Why are these things not forming a large part of our curriculum? Why is it that what we call knowledge? I mean, so at some point I was getting angry. I was getting really angry. I was like, if what we call knowledge today remains subject based and not context based and not really capture these kind of things that are involving, right, then there's going to be a problem. And so for I'm actually going somewhere, and that's on the issue of scenario planning. And I still wanted
Mm.
to like say some things about that, because um um I've pushed it to like a number of school owners, I think about two or three. And then, I mean, the feedback I got was that, okay, they were excited about it. I mean, I shared some case studies with them on these things, and, I saw that they were excited. But then when they looked at the whole thing that was going to be involved, I mean, they were like, oh my God, I'm not sure I want to do this right now. Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure I want to do this right now. Like, why do I have to just start bothering about the future? Let me just stay in
Mm.
the present and just live my life in the present, and just pick things as they come, just one step, one day at a time, and let me just keep going. I'm like, why? And then when you share that data, that 87% of people are not interested in foresight, and that just kind of validates that experience, that feedback, and what it looks like. So I know for school leaders that are listening to this conversation right now, I need you to encourage them. I need you to let them know why scenario planning is very important, why they need to embrace it. Because I can tell you, doctor, that I don't think I have met. I think there are a few school leaders in Africa that are thinking about these things. I think there
Mm.
are a few school leaders that are thinking about these things, right? So let's talk about Africa one bit, even though this is a global conversation. But then for
Mm.
us in Africa too, I mean, this is very, very huge. It's something big. So please, doctor, I need you to encourage school leaders, on why they need to embrace scenario planning, on why this is something they need to do today.
Um, I think um, it would be good for people to prepare for change,
Hmm.
because it is better to be caught prepared than unprepared.
Hmm.
Um, I think at their heart, anyone who is in education has a moral obligation and a value that has driven them to want to impact the next generation. I think it's fundamental within education. When you're working with young people, your desires for the best outcome for them. And we're living in a time where the definition of best outcome has changed. And if we want to remain true to our calling as educators, then we have to take that brave stance. And I say
Hmm.
brave stance because it is scary to look down the barrel of the future and try and make meaning out of all this change that's going on. But we have to do it so that we create the infrastructure that's needed to support the generations that are in the classroom and the generations that are going to be coming into the classroom over the coming decades. And I think that those educators who are willing to step into that space are going to leave a mark, and they will be remembered because they will be the transformers of Africa. We're living in that time where there is that opportunity to be amongst the heroes of history. That's what turbulent times bring. They bring to the surface those innovators, those brave people who are willing to be the first to talk about something, willing to be the first to do something. And those are opportunities that I really feel that as Africans, we exclude ourselves from because we don't know. Or because we're afraid. You mentioned earlier about having all sorts of superstitions around the future. But we need to break through that if we want the future to be different, if we want Africa to actually have a voice. I really don't think that it will mean much to us as a continent if we are the most populated continent and it's just a number. It's not impact. We're not adding value to the greater global community. But that value starts with us. We are the generation, us, the educators of today, are the generation that has the power to actually do something. And so that would be my encouragement. That let's take action. Let's really take action. Based on foresight, based on doing our research, let's make the best possible decisions that will lead to the futures that we want. And we all have aspirations about what the future should look like. If you're not thinking about your children, then think about your grandchildren. They're the ones who are going to be living in that future. And so what sort of future as an educator do you want them to grow up in? And now's the time to start creating it, because it doesn't happen overnight.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Priska. I mean, that's powerful. And I see a need. I mean, I see a need for school leaders to get into partnership with with futurists, with with certified foresight practitioners. I mean, like yourself. I'm also looking to tour that part as well, and that is why in fact, that was one of the things when I saw these effects. I went to the website. I was trying to check, and I saw the heavy amount. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. I'm gonna do that later. But yeah, but it's something I really want to do, just to keep broadening my understanding in that regard. But I see that there's going to be need for in fact, I think that for the school business, like school needs to set, and again, I'm entering the last question gradually. Like school needs to step into what I call the partnership age. A season or a time where school needs to embrace every partnership. I mean, with so many sectors, just for the sake of reducing that gap, that knowledge gap between school, the society, and the workplace. And because either I've discovered that there's a wide gap between school. School is just busy doing its own things. I mean, school is not drawing its essence from the society, from the industrial landscape locally and globally. So I see that there's a serious gap right there, and I see that one of the partnership that school needs to embrace is partnership with futurists, because it helps school to understand, because the education sector stands at a very pivotal position, because for any society, the education sector is like the gate, it's like the entrance. Whatever is coming, if we desire any change in any sphere, any society, it's going to have to start from our education. We have to educate ourselves into it. And so if school leaders are not partnering with futurists, are not coming to meet somebody like Dr. Priska and saying, hey, Dr. Priska, we want to just partner with you, and whether we want to make you a member of our board member, or want to bring you as on board as a board member, or we just want to have you around as a foresight practitioner, for our school and all of that. And I think that kind of partnership is going to be needed at the time that we are in. Because of the how delicate the education sector is. I'm saying this with serious passion because of Africa, majorly. I believe strongly that our advantage is our young people, but our disadvantage is how we educate our young people. The education sector in Africa needs to be totally revamped. What we call knowledge, what we prioritize as knowledge today, needs to be totally shaken off, because more or less it keeps taking us backward. It keeps taking us backward. Our education and our reality, they are going in different directions, and I'm seeing a lot that needs to happen really there, and I'm seeing that really there has to be like a strong and heavy partnership between school and between futurists. I mean, between people like yourself, who are talking about these things. So as we wrap up, um, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see now? What do you see in the next decade about what teaching and learning can look like? Right? I mean, I'm seeing and hearing different kind of things, but what do you see? What do you think teaching and learning can look like? Do you see a situation where there won't be need for teachers anymore? There's that conversation, and there's that conversation, and they're like, no, technology cannot replace teachers. No, teachers are going to be needed in the building. No, what do you see like in the next decade looking at teaching and learning in K-12?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
That's a really big question. And I think particularly for the context that we're operating in Adebayo, in Africa, it's a big question because we are faced with the reality of this 1 billion under 18-year-olds that's coming. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about what does it take to educate 1 billion people. When you look at the statistics for the number of schools we have on the continent, they're not enough. The number of teacher training colleges we have on the continent is not enough. And even if we were to say that we're going to build teacher training colleges, one of the things that we're struggling with is making teaching an attractive profession. So the profession isn't attracting enough people as it is. And so we have a huge dilemma, a really, really big dilemma that we need to solve. And we need to be very creative about solving it. Well, first we need to be open about the facts, which are some of the things that I've mentioned, the challenges that we're going to face as a continent. And so being creative is going to require us to lay aside what we believe education should be based on our prior experience. And I actually personally think that the model needs to change completely. It needs to change completely, and we need to be open to new ways of delivering learning. And I say learning intentionally because learning can happen inside the four walls of a classroom. It can also happen outside. And so when our focus becomes a focus on how do we help people learn, I think it'll open up the avenues by which that learning can be delivered, and who can deliver that learning and when that learning can be delivered. So I don't have any answers yet. I have some things which I've been toying around with, the possibility of small community schools being an answer because these children are already in communities. The possibility of empowering caregivers to be the primary deliverers of learning somehow, whether through technology, because I don't see how we can have enough classrooms for 1 billion children. But those 1 billion children are sleeping somewhere every single day. And so what does it look like to turn that place where they eat and sleep and bath? What does it look like to turn that place into a place of learning as well? How can that be done? And how can it be done so that everyone is included? So those are some of the things that I think around when it comes to what learning could look like in the future. With regards to doing away with the human completely and leaving it all to technology, I'm a little wary of that because learning isn't just about delivering content. There's an emotional side that needs to be mentored in every child, and I don't think technology can do that. Humans are the ones that embody emotion. There is a mentorship because these children are growing up in community, and whether we like it or not, they're watching how we relate, how adults around them relate, and that through that they're actually learning about how do I function within the communities that I'm in. And so I still firmly believe that people should remain the center of it. And as a futurist, that's the sort of future that I would want to design, a future where people are at the center of learning, and technology is there to support and augment what they do, not remove them.
Powerful, powerful. Yeah, community. So I just to which is what you just said about, thank you for mentioning that number. I mean, 1 billion kids that we need to educate in Africa, and how to really solve that problem. And the moment you mentioned that, I was just thinking about what role technology will play in really solving that problem, and the kind of scalable technology that can really help in solving that problem. Yeah, so many things I'm thinking about. And of course, for teachers too, for teachers training, we have that number too. A lot of teachers. You mentioned that we do not have enough teachers training college and teachers. And of course, for one, I believe that the kind of training that teachers, okay, maybe these teacher training schools, we need to partner, we need to get into partnership, with because I think that the kind of training that the teachers that we have of the future we need is not what is currently being delivered in teacher training programs today. I think that no, I think that there's going to be a role shift. I think that it's not going to be about subject mastery. Because
Yeah,
right now technology can do that better than humans. I mean,
yeah,
I can technology can be everywhere with me, can be every time, every day, and and can past knowledge, can there's the YouTube, there's the Khan Academy, there's the many things. There's now the Chat GPT, the cloud, the Grok, and those open platforms where I mean, I can get a real-time response. I was in a school recently, and then I was in a learners conference, and then I asked the kids, I said, how many of you have used Chat GPT? And about 80% of them raised their hands. I said, hey, and I'm very sure that the remaining 20% are, but I'm sure they have also used it too, because
yeah,
it just tells me again that now we have come to a point where what teaching and learning looks like needs to be totally, because we cannot be asking students questions that ChatGPT can answer them directly. Let me
yeah,
even take ChatGPT out of the conversation. Google search. We
yeah,
cannot be asking these kids questions that if they just enter it on Google search, they're gonna get the answer. Then
yeah,
it appears to me that that is the kind that that learning experience itself is not valuable. It's not going to put the kids in a place where they're going to have a competitive edge,
yeah,
because the world they're going to enter into is going to require a lot of creativity. And that just kept on bringing so many things to my mind that this is something. So now that these things are happening, then that means subject mastery is no longer a skill that teachers should be proud of and say, I'm a good math teacher, I know how to teach maths very well. So me, I'm a good physics teacher, I know how to teach this very well. Because it means that you cannot compete with technology on that ground. And you've mentioned a number of other things that we need humans for. And I'm thinking about that, and about what that will mean, in an ideal school environment, and what that is going to look like, and the implication as well, even as we're approaching and nearing the future. So for this 1 billion kids we're going to have in our context in Africa, and now they're going to be repeated. I'm thinking about so many things for the teachers training as well, because of the number. I'm thinking about, how then concerning community skilling. I think that this one is going to be so great. I think it's going to be so great. I have someone on LinkedIn. It's possible her, Sharon. She has a micro school. I've been reading about micro schools too, seeing a lot of things in Europe. There's a movement towards that as well. And I'm seeing how that can really help our context in Africa. Truly, I'm really seeing an emergence of micro schools.
yeah,
What you call like community schooling. I'm really seeing that as something that's going to be so needed. I'm seeing that possibility. And then how technology can also like help that move. If these kids can have access to a kind of technology that is not too expensive, uh, you know, that just make sure that, let's say, for example, in Nigeria, right, for our numbers, all these kids are learning almost the same thing, right? So wherever they are, so the out of school children, wherever they are, they have access to this technology that just make sure that you can have a personalized learning experience wherever you are,
Mm.
and you can just keep learning this at any time and all of that. I also know that this might also mean like a challenge, like, a challenge, a threat to the conventional school business. Um,
Definitely, definitely.
oh my God.
S-
Yeah, please go ahead, doctor.
So, so I was just going to add to what you were saying about teacher training colleges. So I'm fortunate to be working at a college where we've just recently transformed our teacher training curriculum. It was an exercise that the government was doing, and so they mandated all teacher training colleges to revamp their curriculum and
Wow,
align
amazing.
it with emerging trends. And
Hmm,
I had the pleasure of teaching my first module on that new curriculum. And the whole module looks at just thinking. We're
hmm,
talking about thinking. So, like you're
hmm,
saying, that we need to shift away from content expertise to
hmm,
the things that really matter. Because, like you said, the content the kids can always get off AI or
hmm,
Google search.
hmm,
Information has become a commodity now, but it's the
yeah.
ability to think about that information. So once I've acquired that information from YouTube or from AI or Google search, how do I think through that information? How do I make use of it? And so those are
Hmm,
the skills that teachers actually need to be learning for
hmm,
themselves, and then how to facilitate that type of thinking for their students, so that
hmm,
they develop frameworks for being critical in their thinking, for being creative, for applying computational thinking to apply that logic into different scenarios. Um, so I think that's really key. And then with the community school, I've actually worked with one organization that had that model and was supporting that model. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but it needs a lot of support, because the traditional infrastructure, curriculum, books, um, is not accessible at community school level, because they're
hmm,
still not widely recognized. But it's definitely, I think, something that's going to grow. That whole community school, micro school arena
hmm,
is going to disrupt our traditional schools.
hmm, Powerful. Yeah, so we have to go. I didn't want to keep you any longer. This is really a very interesting conversation. And I like that, for context, we are touching Africa as well. Even while this is a global conversation. And this has really been an awesome time with you, Dr. Priska. Thank you for sharing this amazing data, this information, this reports, and a lot of this insight, foresight, with us in this episode. There's so much to really go back and think about. There's so much to really
Mhm.
go back and think about, um, especially for our dear continent Africa, and for the challenges that we have, and and as regards to solving these problems. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Priska. It's been an amazing time. Um,
Thank you so
so
much.
the recording of the session is going to be available on LinkedIn. So once we wrap up now, if you want to like go back to the recording, it's going to be very much available on LinkedIn. And to also all our viewers too, could you please help me say a big thank you to Dr. Priska for sharing all of these insights and amazing knowledge with us. And it is my hope that from this conversation, everyone that is listening, that you are going to go from here and keep spreading this knowledge. We need this knowledge to spread everywhere. We need every educator in Africa to be a future thinker. We need
Mm.
every educator in Africa to embrace foresight. It's very important to our success. It's very important to our prosperity as a continent. It's very important to our growth and development as a continent. We cannot we cannot do without it. We need it. Our children, our kids in the school today, they need it. They need to embrace it. It must become an important fabric of what we're doing in our school environment from Monday to Friday, and something we'll talk about. It needs to saturate the whole education system we have in Africa. and we can do it. Let's make it happen. So Dr. Priska, I'm going to allow you to go. I'm going to release you. I can see some people are already coming around.
Okay.
I'm
All
going to allow
right.
you to
Thank
go.
you so much. It's
Thank you
been a
so much for your
pleasure
time.
chatting with you.
Yes, same here. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
All
Wow, what an amazing session. Yeah, what an amazing session with Dr. Priska Mufunde from Zimbabwe. She's a certified Foresight practitioner. Yes, she's on LinkedIn, right? I mean, that was where we met, and that's part of what we're talking about when we talk about Foresight. When we talk about the future of things, how the world is evolving. I mean, if you're a professional learning industry and you're not on LinkedIn, you're not doing good. You need to get on LinkedIn. It's very important. That's because of globalization. The whole world is a global village, and we're seeing platforms like LinkedIn, like Facebook, like Instagram, bringing the world together closer and closer and closer again. Right? Globalization is a reality. The whole world is a global village. Right? Just a single global village. Technology has broken down the borders. Right? Our challenges, our realities as a people, they are identical. You can see what she's talking about in Zimbabwe, what I'm talking about in Nigeria. Our realities as a people, they are becoming identical. By the way, globalization is a reality, you know. And I'm so excited, about the energy from this conversation. What what this is about. I mean, I'm full of energy right now, and I cannot wait to jump on some certain tasks because of this conversation. I mean, this conversation has come with a lot of insight, a lot of momentum for me personally. You know, even as I think about the future, even as I think about what I am doing, what EAZY-DIGI is doing with schools for the future. And like I said, we've now come to a time where schools need to partner with futurists, right? I think it's so critical, right? You need to have a futurist on your board, right? Whatever school you have anywhere, I think you need to have a futurist on your board, right? On your school board, you need a futurist. It's so important. I mean, I was listening to Reverend Samadeyemi. um, you know, he did a series on foresight, scenario planning, and he was talking about these things. He was talking about there was a time where Shell, Shell, right? The petrochemical, so they had to like just employ a number of futurists to come into their company and help them navigate, right? And I think that for the companies that have embraced this, right, they are succeeding largely right now, right? Why for those that have not embraced this, they are shocked, right? And while Dr. Priska was speaking, I was getting a lot of inspiration. You know, one of the inspiration I got was that if you are 80% shocked, it means you did not embrace. It means you have not embraced foresight. If in whatever it is you're doing, you get to a point where when things happen, you're always 80% shocked, right? You're always too surprised. I mean, one of the posts she put on LinkedIn, she start in that post, Dr. Priska was saying that the goal of foresight is not just to predict the future, but to reduce the surprises, right? So, she was saying in that post that we can reduce the surprises, right? But it's not just all about predicting the future. We can reduce the surprises, right? We can reduce the surprises. I mean, it can be 20%. The surprises can be reduced, right? When we embrace foresight. I mean, there's a lot of work in there, right? There's a lot of work, to be sincere, there's a lot of work in there. But that work is so important. I mean, it's better we put ourselves under pressure now than wait for pressure in the future. And that's now the kind of pressure that comes as a shock and disrupt the whole system and everything. We need to embrace foresight. Are you an educator? Are you a school leader? Are you thinking about sustainability? You need to embrace. You need to declare. You need to declare a conference. You need to declare a meeting. I mean, 3 days meeting, 2 days meeting, and you are having conversations with people, and you are talking about this thing. What is the future of our business? What is the future of teaching and learning? How do we navigate? What kind of future do we envisage? Right? Everyone is creating their future, and the future belongs to those that prepare for it now. Everyone is creating their future. Countries are creating their future. You see what Dubai wants to. Dubai is creating a future where they're going to be living in mass, right? And they're doing a lot of crazy stuff. Where that's right. That's by the way. Everyone is creating their future, right? Everyone is creating. There's a space for you to create a future that aligns with the way the world is evolving. I mean, so it's something to think about deeply. Right? I encourage everyone, think about it, burst into conversations, right? Dr. Priska is on LinkedIn. I know you can reach out to her. I mean, you can reach out to me as well. We can have conversations. It's so important, right? That we embrace foresight and future thinking. I mean, I'm so excited. Wow. I'm so excited about this conversation. And like I said, I mean, I've got a lot of work to do. I don't know about you, right? So yeah, we're gonna be coming back again with, in these webinars, we're always addressing very pertinent issues. The last one we had, it was about AI in education, the Curtis Moore story. I mean, a school in the UK, boarding school in the UK that has embraced AI over a period of time with amazing, stories and all that, right? And today it's about, foresight in K-12 education, right? We're always based on research. We're always bringing out very important topics and talking about them in our webinars. So you can look forward to our next webinar, and where we're going to be addressing, this. And of course, we have a conference we do every year, K-12 2030. Yeah, I need to start talking about that. K-12 2030 is a global education conference where we talk about school model for the society and economy of 2030 and beyond, right? It's a future forward conference, right? And I'm going to make sure that Dr. Priska comes back in that conference, just to even handle a session where we're talking about foresight in education again. I think that has to be like a very important part of that conference. Yeah, and also try to bring back Tom again from Curtis Moore, to come talk about AI in education and come share their story. Yeah, I think our speakers are getting sorted. So it's going to be so great and so massive. Please stay connected. Let's stay connected on LinkedIn. Like I said again, you can follow Dr. Priska on LinkedIn. She's always posting amazing stuff. I mean, you can invite her. You can, to come train your teachers, to come train your management and all of that, right? So we need to embrace that partnership. We need to have that conversation. All right. So many thanks to everyone that has joined the conversation. I cannot. Let me see if I can capture some names right now. Yeah, thank you so much, Bisayo. Thanks for engaging. So there are quite a number of persons that I cannot see your name. Sometimes LinkedIn doesn't show like everyone, but then I know there are quite a number of persons that are engaging that have watched this webinar. The recording is available. You can come back, you can go back to LinkedIn and watch again and again and catch all the information in it. All right. So I look forward to seeing you soon again in our next webinar. All right. My name is Adebayo, the head of research and chief learning designer at EAZY-DIGI.